has a PhD in psychology and a master's in clinical psychology and comprehensive cognitive behavioral orientation at the National University of St. Louis. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and here we go. I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly, the mountaintop. Aconcagua. Am I pronouncing it? Perfect. She has been the principal investigator of CONICET and vice director of the Institute of Human and Social Environmental Sciences. She's the director of doctoral studies in psychology, again at Aconcagua University, and director of Research Institute of the Faculty of Psychology. She's a full member of the Argentine Association of Behavioral Sciences, a member of the Inter-American Society of Psychology, and a member of the American Psychological Association. She's a full professor of child development psychology, experience in child and adolescent developmental psychology, specifically with executive functions and social and cognitive skills for the solution of interpersonal problems. She has been an exhibitor and a presenter at conferences. She's published scientific articles in national and international journals, book chapters, co-author of 2 books, and an exhibitor of national international scientific events. She's a director of research, direction of research called CONICET Scholars, direction of doctoral and master's theses, and direction of completed theses, a direction of research groups as well. Current line of research is family and school social climate, incidents on development of socio-cognitive affective skills in school children in the province of Mendoza, Argentina. This is quite a long list of your accomplishments, and we're very grateful that you're giving the talk today with Selena, because you're a great team together. Selena, now I'm going to pronounce your name, I hope correctly, Korzianowski. Sounds perfect. She has a PhD in psychology, the National Institute from St. Louis, Argentina. She's a researcher at the National Scientific and Technical Research Council, Technical Scientific Center, and an associate professor at the School of Psychology in Aconcagua University, Mendoza. She's a professor of neuropsychology, specialization at the same university, Aconcagua, and she's an academic editor of the editorial board of the University of Aconcagua, the publishing. She's a member of the Argentine Association of Behavioral Sciences and the Inter-American Society of Psychology. She's presently involved in educational psychology research involving neurocognitive evaluation, a design of ecological intervention to promote cognitive development in children. She has made many presentations to national and international scientific meetings, authored numerous publications in national and foreign index journals, and she has been the director of research groups at Aconcagua University and a member of research project of CONICET at the University of Aconcagua. I think I need a medal today for pronouncing it about 12 times. Thank you so much for this very important talk that you're going to be giving today. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you for this wonderful presentation. I'm going to try to share my screen. Wait a minute. I'm trying. I don't know if I'm doing. I'm sorry.
If you move your cursor to the bottom of the screen, do you see where it says share screen?
Yes. There you can see.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry, but now I'm going to try to put there. There it is. Well, first of all, Jack, thank you for your presentation. Before we begin, we will Brad and Gerard for their invitation to participate to the symposium. Of course, we want to pay thanks to Sheena for her support, to the organizers, moderators, and for all the presenters, because we have learned a lot about their contribution So thank you to all of you. The research work Mirta and I are going to present today is supporting students' executive function in the classroom context. This research work is framed in the line of research we have been developing in the Institute of Human, Social and Environmental Science in Mendoza, CONICET, where we work, which is focused on analyzing the variables of family and school that influence the cognitive, social, and emotional development of children and adolescents, and designing ecological intervention aimed at improving family and school resources in order to promote healthy development in children and adolescents. The school-based prevention program we are going to describe was a specific request by the Department of Education of Mendoza for the Provincial Plan for Interlevel Transition between elementary and middle school. This plan is interested in enriching students' resources for improving a better learning, a successful learning trajectory. And we were requested to train teachers on the implication of the executive function in school learning. That's why we designed this school-based prevention program, which goal was to train elementary and middle school teachers in the design of educational activities and practices aimed at enriching the school curriculum in order to promote student executive functions. Why executive functions? Well, because executive functions are a set of higher order cognitive abilities that are involved in the self-regulation of the action, thoughts, and emotions necessary to achieve goals and solve problems. 3 core executive functions have been identified: inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility, from which other more complex are built, such as organization, planning, metacognition, fluency, decision-making. And these cognitive control functions act in an interrelated way, enabling a flexible and self-regulated behavior. EF play a critical role in cognitive, social, and emotional development of children and adolescents and predict many life outcomes. For example, a proper development of executive function in childhood is associated with a good school performance, a purposeful social relationship, emotional well-being, health, and behavior self-regulation, which all predict better health, better quality of life, greater academic success, better employment status, and lower incidence of behavior problems in adolescent and adulthood. EF are considered critical for school performance, successful learning, and favoring the adjustment of children to the school context. EF emerge early in childhood and continue a very long development until adulthood. So EF development is lengthy and results in the interaction between brain maturation and the influence of the environment. Over the last decades, the environmental factors that model EF development have been studied, identifying child, family, school, community factors. We know that family and school are the two social institutions that most shape the development of children. That's why it has been an increasing interest in studying family factors and school factors that model executive function development. For family, it has been pointing out parents' educational level, prenatal and postnatal stress level, family socioeconomic level, rearing practices, cognitive stimulation, quality of mother and child interaction. For school climate, classroom management, teachers, emotional support, collaborative interaction between teacher and students, peer relationship, etc. Based on this finding, it has been a growing interest in designing ecological intervention aimed at improving resources in family and school in order to enhance children's cognitive development, especially in children for vulnerable contexts. From this perspective, a school-based intervention has been designed. One way to do this intervention is enrich school curricula, which embed activities and practices aimed at promoting student executive function into the school curricula. Meta-analysis studies report that the enriched curricula are one of the best interventions to promote children EF. Why? Because they can benefit more children and be sustained over time. Because it's ecological designs where teachers are responsible for implementing the technique and strategies. And these highlight the role of the teacher as a mediator of the cognitive development of the students. Two ways have been identified by which educators promote the development of the students' EF. One implicit, for modeling the use of EF in daily school activities, and the other explicit, through scaffolding the development of a student's self-regulatory capacities. Teachers modeling EF for their students in many ways. For example, when they plan and sequence learning tasks, when they organize and structure the classroom, when they resist distraction, control frustration while maintaining a good class climate, use their flexibility to find different solutions to a problem. It has been found out that teachers who denote greater cognitive and emotional self-regulation abilities are more likely to use educational practices that explicitly support or scaffold students in the acquisition of self-regulation abilities. Scaffolding is an adjustable and transit support that enables students to solve problems that they would not solve without receiving help. A very recent study has pointed out that scaffolding of planning and cognitive flexibility skill offered by educators was associated with improvement in the students' EF 6 months later. Well, based on this finding, we designed a professional teacher training program to support students' EF in the classroom. Here is the method. The goals were two. First, to help teachers reflect on students' EF and their own classroom practices used to support students' self-regulation. And two, to train educators in the design of teaching sequences aimed at strengthening students' EF. Participants were 735 educators from Mendoza. From 45% were middle school teachers and 55% elementary school teachers. 73% were female. The teacher age ranged between 24 to 57 years old. The mean of teaching length was 10 years. 76% has completed postgraduate studies and 96% has done teaching training courses. The instruments we used were two inventories. The first was the teacher observation inventory of a student's EF. This inventory allows teachers to assess the executive functioning of their group of students during daily school activities. It's made up by 7 subscales. attention, inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility, working memory, organization, planning, and metacognition. The other is the educational practices inventory. This inventory assesses activities and practice that teachers use to strengthen and scaffold the development of students' self-regulatory skills. It's made up by 10 subscales: organization techniques, learning expectation and routine, students' involvement, instruction, planning, scaffolding, cognitive flexibility scaffolding, metacognition scaffolding, and behavioral and emotional control scaffolding. The score of the subscale in both inventory range from 0 to 2 points, indicating that the higher the score, greater the performance. The professional teacher training program on EF we designed was structured by a virtual platform. It was conducted online and it was organized in 3 stages. In the first stage, a theoretical practical training on EF was offered to teachers. Here, we proposed teachers 2 activities: reading a theoretical material about the conceptualization of the EF and its implication in learning, and assessing EF of their group of students. In the second stage, teachers were able to reflect on their role on the students' cognitive development. And here, we propose teacher 2 activities. First, analyzing a school-based intervention to promote a student EF, and teacher self-assessed the educational practices. In the third stage, we train teaching team to design didactic sequences. And here we propose 4 activities: analyzing a theoretical model proposed to frame teaching action, reading a manual with techniques and strategies to promote EF, presenting model of didactic sequences, and designing didactic sequences articulating school curricula with the strategies they have learned. Well, here are the results. First, we present teacher report on the executive function of their student groups during daily school activities. As you can see in the figure, the mixed value of the executive function of the student range near 1, which is indicating that they that the student group have a low to a moderate performance in executive function. This indicates that teachers perceive that the group of students have some difficulties in the executive functions, and metacognition was the weakened executive function perceived by teachers. Then we analyze the classroom practices to promote and scaffold a student EF used by the participating teachers. As you can see in the figure, in most of the variables we evaluate, teachers obtain an average near 1.50, more near to 2. So this indicates that teachers frequently use strategies and guidelines that to promote executive function in their students. The most widely used strategies to promote executive function were cognitive flexibility, working memory, and planning. Also, we observed that teachers frequently use clear instruction and double check if the student understands the instructions. Also, we observe that frequently teachers explain, practice, and review procedures of the text and provide positive feedback to their student in order to promote. On the other hand, 98% of the teachers reported that field inventory helped them to reflect on their daily educational practice, and 97% say that they now it included as a regular teaching practice. Finally, in the third stage, the teaching team create 85 didactic sequences where they articulate the strategies to promote executive function in their students with different curricular areas, such as math, reading, writing workshop, environmental education, natural science, social science, gym, sex education, art, etc. The sequences were creative, were innovative, and it stands out that 36 of the sequences present an interdisciplinary proposal, and 15 include activities that stimulate family and school communication. In 94% of the sequences, the teaching team currently identify the EF they will promote with the activities they have been designing. In each sequences, a teaching team choose between 2 to 6 executive functions to promote, being the most chosen metacognition, organization, and planning, as you can see in the figure. Finally, in the 83% of the didactic sequences, the teaching team report the activities they will use to promote a student EF. The strategies most used by the teachers were those to scaffolding metacognition, such as developing self-grid evaluation, developing a specific question to help a student to self-assess and self-monitor their learning processes. Here are other examples that the teacher teams propose to scaffold executive function. For example, for scaffolding attention, they propose using varied resources to capture and sustain the attention, such as song, web resources, YouTube resources, satellite images. For inhibitory control, they propose using go and stop signals, ball games, and playground activities. For working memory, they propose, for example, helping their group of students to do mental calculation using card games, crossword calculations, and memory games. Also for planning, they propose modeling the use of the agenda and the school calendar. For organization, modeling the note-taking processes. And for cognitive flexibility, they propose helping children to design new table games and to stimulate creativity. Here is our discussion. The importance of promoting student executive functions arises as a way to increase the resources for learning and a healthy development. EF can be promoted through school-based intervention, such as enriched school curricula. It highlights the role of the teachers as a mediator of the cognitive development of students and points out the requirement of transferring knowledge and strategies to the educators. Based on this finding, we designed and implemented a professional teacher training program aimed at promoting student EF in the classroom. That's why we provide teachers with an updated and scientifically grounded knowledge about training EF in the school context. We also provide teachers with opportunities to assess a student's EF and their educational practices. That's why teachers were able to do an initial diagnosis for their student group to establish clear and well-founded objectives, select the strategies to be used, and adjust the intervention devices to the need of their group of students. Also, teachers were able to assess guidelines and teaching strategies they daily use for strengthening their student EF. It was very surprising for us to know that participating educators quite frequently use education practice to promote student EF, especially cognitive flexibility. And this is an encouraging result because it has been pointed out that the use of this classroom practice over time is associated with the promotion of student EF. Also, teachers reported that filling of the inventory helped them to reflect on their early educational practices and allowed them to learn new strategies. And this is very encouraging because frequent review of the inventory can be a valuable resource for which teachers can adjust their strategies according to the need and progress of their students, discuss and analyze educational practices with other colleagues, and create a consistent educational plan for different subjects, grades, or levels. But the most relevant product of this training was the didactic sequences that the teaching team carry out and create. The teaching team create 85 didactic sequences, which were creative, innovative, use diverse resources, include playful activities, and stimulate student involvement. The teaching team integrated specific activities to strengthening student EF into the teaching of math, Spanish, social science, art, gym, environmental education, etc. Teachers proposed a range of activities to promote especially metacognition, planning and organization skill, and cognitive flexibility, in view to favoring students' passage from elementary to a middle school, a time which presents students with new challenges and demands. And here, more complex EF are necessary for a student to successfully solve more complex learning tasks and to develop a self-regulation of learning processes. The teaching team also, and this is important too, to know that the teaching team were able to create the scaffolding strategies and activities they will going to use to scaffold the EF development of their students, such as modeling the school calendar, helping students to do brainstorming, etc. Reflect on how to scaffold cognitive development and diagram it in a concrete action is not an easy task for educators. But in this experience, educators were able to overcome this challenge and develop ideas on how to adapt their educational practices and daily activities to promote a student's EF. In sum, the teacher training achieved its goal, managing to transfer knowledge and strategies to educators who were able to use this knowledge to create new and better educational practices that promote student executive function. And this data bring new evidence about the possibility of bridging educational practice and cognitive neuroscience, and also points out that researchers and teachers should articulate perspective, knowledge, experience, and objective to co-contract enrich educational practice. Well, we think that the strength of this experience were integrating theory of learning and for neuroscientific model, providing teacher with a specific tool, and stimulate teacher involvement in the design of the didactic sequences. Limitations were professional training began in the middle of the school year, only lasted 3 months and was conducted online. Also, the data is limited to teachers from Mendoza. Here are conclusions. The training was a significant learning experience for the participating educators of Mendoza, who appropriate the contribution and strategies of the neuroscience to create new and better educational practices aimed at strengthening students' EF. And for our opinion, it's present an advance in the training of Latin American teachers in 3 directions. It's a novel experience. It involved training teachers in the design of didactic sequences that integrate the promotion of a student EF. It was applied to the passage from elementary to middle school, and it shares the foundation of the SBFC model and extends its focus. We think that maybe it extends its focus to a new area of application, neuroscience. We are hopeful that our finding will contribute with knowledge applicable to teacher training, and considering findings which suggest that the quality of teaching is the single most important school variable influencing student achievement, and in line with SBFC model and pioneering in the field of executive function have postulated, we underline the importance of incorporating this school-based prevention program within public education policies and in teacher training programs. Well, thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Mirta and Selena. Love some time for some questions, but before we get there, you have modeled the best systemic approach, and that's research, teacher, student. And for that, we are grateful that you are promoting the model of systemic thinking in all parts. Let's open the floor for comments and questions.
Can I comment? I would like to really thank them. It's very nice to see how you can merge these different areas of education and learning and teaching with neuroscience and education and learning strategies and didactics. And my one question that I do have, though, is that whether you have also looked at how the students perceived these changes that has performed by the teachers. So on the one hand, you train the teachers to have new skills to promote EF within the classroom, particularly for this transitional phase between elementary and middle school. But on the other hand, you also have to move with the times, where we are now moving away from the teacher controlled classroom situation to a student centered classroom or learning approach. So how do you bring the student-centered approach into this, promoting or listening also to the voices of the students and their perception of the changes that has performed?
Well, Jardina, really thank you for your contribution. I think it's going to be a very interesting topic for new research. And for this moment, about this program, we only focused on providing teachers with the tools, but we didn't have the opportunity to look what is going to happen at the classroom, because we did this training last year in the last 3 months of the of the year. So teachers only have the possibility to be trained, and they don't have the possibility to apply all this at their classroom. So it really was a pity, but I think that it's very interesting what you are saying. Maybe in the future, when we have the possibility to continue working with teachers and professors, because here I work with a lot of professors of different subject areas. That it was very, very interesting because it's moved me from another area. I have always been working with teachers, and working with professors is really different. So I think that in future research, we are going to take account on what you are saying, because I think it's very, very important to hear students too, and to understand if they really like the activities, or if they really note the changes about, I don't know, for example, what they think about using a school calendar, because here in Argentina it's not a frequent practice, or an organizers, or I don't know, have a teacher who models them the way to take note, do the process of note taking. For example, this was one of the things that teachers points out, and it was very interesting that they include these strategies that we have been provide them to the design of the didactic sequences they have done.
Right.
I don't know if I respond.
We have one more question that we'll just want to get to a little bit more of the people that raise their hand. I think
Okay.
it's Salimos. Yes.
Erwin, yes. Thank you very much for the presentation of this action research project. I thought it was wonderful. I'm not an educational psychologist at all, but I'm very interested in executive functioning, partly because I have a 3.5-year-old son, so you know what that's like. And then also I'm a teacher at a community college where we often get students who are weak in a lot of learning skills, you know. So I myself do a lot of work, even with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, on developing organizational skills, learning strategies, etc. So it was fascinating, and I wish I was a teacher that was part of those things.
Thank you.
I have two questions, actually. One question has to deal with, it's more like trends, you know, like, are young people's executive functioning skills getting worse? And if the answer is yes, I'm wondering if you could tell me why. And the other question, if they're not getting worse, then why do I always hear from my teacher friends that kids can't pay attention anymore, or they're, you know what I mean, like they're harder to teach? And then the second question I have has to do with how the teachers that went through your workshop, what type of strategies did they create to cultivate relationships with the families? I saw that was part of one of the activities that they did, how they brought the families into promoting as educational executive functioning within their interactions with their children. So I'm just interested in those two questions. One about, is it getting worse and why? And what did the teachers come up with in terms of including the families in the process of supporting their children's learning?
Thank you for your question. Really very good question for me. First, I think I have been thinking in what you are saying, if the executive function of our children are worsened or not through the time. I think things are changing. Children have to attend a lot of stimuli in their life, and they really start learning through another kind of instrument, like now, virtual. And I think all these things change the attention. They have to attend to different stimulate at the same time, and they became very good processor about all this information. So I was talking with a teacher, and we said that really, we don't know if they have to change the attention so frequently. It's only a bad things to point out. Maybe it's some of the new challenge they have to face in order to learn with this new technology. Anyway, I think that there are functions that are very important. Attention is also very, very important. But for example, inhibitory control, it's a very important function that we know that is associated with better health and with better quality of life and reduce conduct problems in the future. So I think this is a very important matter, that we have to train these cognitive control abilities to, in order not only to benefit learning, but to benefit a healthy development. So I think if we can enrich the curricula with these strategies, it could be a good option to enrich the resources of the children in view to face the difficulties they have to afford more in this difficult situation. This is the first question. And the second question, it was very encouraging for me when I look at these didactic sequences that teacher team decide. For example, to connect family with the school, they propose an activity such as doing an advertisement, for example, for healthy nutrition, and they not only expose this advertisement on the classroom context and the school context, if not in their family and in their community. For example, this is one of the examples, but they really do some activities when family was involved, just because the children tell them what we're doing, or because the family have to help children to do some activities. For example, distributing this advertisement, or maybe helping them doing, I don't know, a special meet when they use these tips they have learned. And I think this was very interesting, because it was the initiative of the teachers. So I think it's very valuable.
Thank you so much. We have a very special thank you from a presenter yesterday, Professor Shashan Yossi, and he will give you the last moments of our thank yous.
Yes, so thank you very much, Selena and Mirta. Your work is really profound, I think, for so many reasons. I was particularly struck by how you were able to weave this idea of the teacher really as the mediator or the guide of the cognitive development of students. And I think where the work really shines is how you're using neuroscience and how you are applying that in terms of the instructional strategies. I'm going to weave in a question and a comment here with my thank you, which is, as we have worked with teachers, we have also found that, for example, the literature now in mindfulness practices to enhance executive function is becoming even more focused on simple strategies like this program called Quiet Time, where you start in the very beginning with 5 minutes of silence, and then you end the class with 5 minutes of silence. The last Surgeon General in the US actually came and endorsed that, came to the San Francisco area and talked about that. So I think that is another area that I hope you will, you and your researchers will explore if it's not already been started there. And secondly, I really like the idea of helping parents understand what you are doing in the classroom so that they can also be supporting this kind of work and enhancing executive function. And I think the challenge we have as Dr. Salimos, am I saying that right? Dr. Salimos? Yeah, raised is this idea that, you know, it's hard for you to teach inhibitory control when kids are so, their dopamine is constantly being activated by all of the digital aspects of the world, whether it's now they have to come on, via a digital platform to learn. They have all these inputs. How do they just sit still and focus on their work, whether it's on a digital or book platform? So I think your work, and you've done a lot of research in this area. I was reviewing all of the different papers you published in the last several years. So I feel that the work that you're doing here is not only very important for what we need to learn as what students need to learn in terms of their own lifelong learning. You talked about, not only the relevance for children, but also for young adults. And Dr. Salimos is saying, working in community college with young adults, they may have been passed through and now they need to be able to apply, hopefully, some executive function skills they've learned. Well, if we could standardize some of the work that you and your colleagues and Mirta have done, even to bring into other countries like the US, then it really gives our transition age youth a fighting chance, not only if they're in college, but in particular if they're in community college or work situations where organization, planning, and executive function is so crucial to their being able to launch into their life. So finally, I think it was very profound to me to hear you talk about the teacher's ability to reflect on their educational practices and allowing themselves to learn new strategies. You talked about how the teachers can model these strategies for their kids. And it gets back to, I think, this concept of teacher self-efficacy in the context of school-based family counseling. The counselor can't do it all by themselves. But if the teacher and the counselor and the parent are thinking about these educational strategies together, that can really have a lot of therapeutic benefit. And having teachers connect with each other on their reflection of their daily practices around these executive function enhancements, I would imagine, and maybe you've already done the research on this, I would imagine that connects them to their work even more, not only to the students, but also to each other. And in these really troubled times, you can help to prevent things like compassion fatigue and burnout, because the teachers can participate in some kind of metacognition around their own self-efficacy and executive function and engagement with the work. So beautifully done. And especially for our group that focuses on school-based family counseling, this idea that the teacher is really an extension of the family. The teachers are another set of trusted adults. And if children can go, and in particular that transition between elementary and middle school you talked about, if they can feel like they had a really strong, solid base in the K through 5, K through 6 world, then they've developed some really important basic skills and executive function to help them launch into the next transition. So thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing more about how this work develops over time. Really beautifully done.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I heard people do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's time for our bio break, and then we'll be back with Dr. Michael Kelly. See you in 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Selena.
Marta,
Selena, Marta.
could I make a comment?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that what you demonstrated so beautifully is the synergistic convergence of the kind of work that we mental health folks do in schools. That what we do is I call it the WD-40, that we grease the wheels to really help kids learn better. And that what we work with is the precursors to executive functioning. And that partnership is what I think we contribute as mental health providers. And to see the work that you've done is just profound. I'm just so pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Selena, I have a small query. Is this the right time to talk?
I didn't
What?
listen.
I don't
Selena,
Can you hear me?
No, Sibna,
No.
not coming in clear.
Okay. Can you hear me? I would like to ask a small question.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Serena, it was a wonderful work. I really enjoyed your presentation and your work. My first query is that, did you experience any resistance in implementing the project from school authority or the teachers? Or all the teachers were spontaneously participated in your study? First. Secondly, you assess students' performance with respect to certain parameter using two standardized questionnaire. Was that there was some Likert scale or something for assessing the student performance against certain parameter, or what sort of scale did you use? And third, do you think that teachers could critically rate the student performance?
Selena and Mert, are you able to hear Sibnath?
Yes, more or less.
Yeah.
Can you you are asking us about the instruments first? Do you want me to make a comment on the instruments? Well, the instrument, I designed those instruments